All right, everybody. We are going to talk about a very important concept, which is called a programming object. Okay. So let me go. I'm just going to use the online because it's faster and it looks a little nicer than me writing in Visual Studio Code, but the concept is the same. So let's imagine I was writing a program and there's a car in this program. Okay. And let's just say for the sake of argument, I was trying to define a bunch of variables that represented this car. So maybe the car has a model. So car model equals, I don't know, uh, sedan. And there's a manufacturer. Car manufacturer equals, Ford. Okay. Cars have a number of miles, right? The odometer. So the current car total miles equals, I don't know, 10,000, let's say. Maybe I want to say, is this car hybrid or not? Car hybrid, this can be a Boolean, so true or something like that, right? And I could kind of keep doing this, right? But the problem is that for every one of these variables, I'm making a separate container. And so like they're all about this one thing, but they're really all these separate containers. And that's really kind of not as efficient. What I would like to do is kind of group all of these variables together because they're really all about one thing. They're about a car, right? It doesn't, the model and the manufacturer and whether it's a hybrid and the total number of miles and color and all this other stuff. It's all just a subset of the fact that we're talking about a car, right? And so it would be better if I could just kind of organize them all as one thing and I could like look at the object and be like, oh, here's a car and it has this color and it has this mileage. Okay. So what a programming object allows us to do is to like build a variable type that can hold multiple pieces of data. Okay. So in the past, we've talked about variable values or types. Like we talked about the concept of numbers. That would be like 1, 12, 1024. We've talked about strings. We've talked about Booleans. Now we're going to talk about objects. Okay. So I'm going to go back here and I've actually already created an object. Okay. And I'll talk about how you can do it. So when you create an object in JavaScript, what you do is it's a type of variable. So you define it the same way you would define any type of variable. Okay. If I was defining a variable that was a string, it would be like let name equals David, right? Or let age equal 21. I wish I was 21. Or, let has hair equal bald or false, right? All right. So in the same way, I got an object here. It's car. Okay. And I've defined it where I'm using brackets and I'm going to list what is known as a property. Okay. And this property is a piece of information about this object, like the manufacturer. So this is the property, this is the value. Then I can have another property, value, another property, value. Okay. You'll see that the syntax is a little different. Okay. So instead of, usually it's like variable equals something here, it's kind of closer to CSS, or it's like colon value, and then there's like a comma here, and then another, value, comma, so on and so on. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to this setup here. And I'm going to say, let's print out the value of this variable. Because remember, the car itself is a variable. And this is going to do variable substitution. So all of this is going to get printed out here to the console. And if I look at this, see how it says object? And then if I open it up, it gives me like, color, manufacturer, number of doors, top speed. Okay, see how that corresponds directly to this. And so that's what's going to happen. It's going to give me all the information related to that variable. Now, what if I wanted to just see one aspect of that object, not every piece of data related to it, but just one aspect? Like, for instance, maybe I wanted to, maybe I wanted to see just the manufacturer. Okay. What we could do is these properties here are subcomponents of the object. Okay. So we're going to use something called the dot operator. And what we do is we say the name of the object first, and then if I use dot or period, and then I say the name of the property, what's going to happen is when this occurs, it's going to go look for the object in just this property. Okay. And it's going to give me the value, which in this case is Ford, and that's going to go here. So if I were to save, I don't remember if I saved or not. Yep. Okay. So it did work. Okay. I'm just getting the manufacturer, or maybe I want to see just the color. Car.color. Okay. Or maybe I just want to see how many doors there are. Print car.doors. Oh, sorry, number of doors is the property. Save and oops, what did I forget? Number of whoops, I said door dot number of doors. It should be car dot number of doors. There you go. Okay. And that's kind of it. We can kind of, build an object. We can call any property of that object. Okay. What I'm going to do here is build my own object. Okay. This object is going to be a school. So let's start by saying let, because it's a variable, school, and then I'm going to do this. And then what I'm going to do is, give it some properties. So schools have names, right? What's the name of this school? San Francisco State University. Okay. I want to say how many students there are. Number of students. So the value of this is going to be a number. If it's a number, you don't have to put in quotation marks. Only strings go in quotation marks. Maybe I want to put in the school mascot. School mascot equals Gators. Okay. Maybe I want to know, does this school have a graduate, does the university or the college have a graduate department? Has graduate department. That would be true. So this is a Boolean. Okay. And I could, keep doing this. We could say how many, how many teachers there are and how many departments there are. And, I don't know. Where is it located, a location, so on and so on and so on. Okay. Now, if I save and I preview this file, not much is really going to happen. But, what I'm going to do is like, okay, I'm going to call just maybe one aspect of this object. So let's use the print command. Now, what I'm trying to do is call the object first and then a property of that object. So if I wanted to know the name of the particular school, I'm going to say school.name. And I get that. Okay. Or if I wanted to know what the mascot was, print school.school mascot. Gators. Okay. So, the point of this is that we can store this information. It's more complicated. So before, when we were doing variables, we would have a single value, right? It was either, X is equal to 10 or X is equal to Andrew or something like, you know what I mean? It was like, name was equal to we'd have like a single value, like 15, right? And then that would go in here. What's happening here is this is more complicated. Okay. What we're really doing here is like, imagine I have a piece of paper And then I'm gonna, let's call this school. If I have one. I should have planned this ahead. Kind of came up with this on the fly. So here's school as a container. And then I'm gonna say, okay, well, it's got name. Number of students, school mascot. As graduate department. Okay. So what's happened here is like, imagine these are all the various, things here, right? Can you see all the various, aspects and the values and all that? And then like, I'm going to just kind of fold this up and store it in the container. And then, so what this is doing is saying like, okay, go get the school variable, which is this, and then go inside of that, look up school mascot. Okay, what's the value? Well, the value is, as I do this backwards, Gators, right? And that's kind of what's happening here, okay? I'm going to show you. So here in this example, I kind of want you to build your own. I want you to just come up with any object. It could be a house or an iPhone or a dog or a cat or whatever it is that you want to do. Okay. So I'm going to do, I don't know, what am I going to do? Oh, I don't know. I'm looking around my room for ideas for objects. I'm going to build I don't know, TV. Okay. Let television. Okay. So this is going to be my object. And, what kind of properties make this up? I don't know, a manufacturer. So maybe like, Sony. Current, we'll call it value, like how much is it worth, to sell it. I don't know. Let's just say for the sake of argument, it's worth $1,000. And you could do width and height and wall mounted or not, wall mounted, true. Width, I don't know, 32 inches or something. Height, I don't know, 15 inches, so on and so on. What year it came out, uh, probably should be like a model number, model. I don't really know. I'm just gonna make something up. V5, B100. I don't, they all have model numbers, right? So I just made up an object, right? And I'm just gonna call one aspect. Maybe I want to know what the name, who's the manufacturer of this television. So television dot manufacturer. So once again, I could do the whole, this would be television, and I could write all the properties down on a piece of paper. But the idea is like, okay, this is the object. And then we go get the value for this. So in this case, the manufacturer is Sony. And if I were to preview this, Sony. Let's say for the sake of argument, I wanted to get the value of this television. Maybe I'm interested in selling it and I want to know how much the value is. So I say television dot value. And I'm going to run this again and it's 1,000. I could even use this in like an if statement. Maybe if I'll do something where like maybe if it's worth more, the TV is worth more than $500, maybe it's worth it to sell it. So I could write an if statement. If the value of the TV, television dot value, is more than 500, you know, your TV is worth a lot, you might consider selling it. Okay. So in other words, what's going to happen here is we can pull values, do variable substitution, So what's going to happen? What's going to happen is it's going to call this, then this, that number is going to substitute into there. Is 1,000 bigger than 500? True. So then this is going to occur. So if I run this, okay. Now, the thing about objects, just like, if I had a variable called, x, let's say at the beginning of my program, x is equal to 0. And then later on in my program, x is equal to 50. Okay, we've done programs where we change the value of a variable, right? Well, this is still a variable, okay? And we can change values of it, okay? So how would I do that? Look, let's just say for the sake of argument that, 6 months, 2 years have passed and the value of the TV has fallen. It was 1,000, now it's going to be, $400. So how would I do that? Well, in the same way I would say, if I was trying to reset X value, I'd say X is equal to 15. What I could do is I could say, well, why don't we take the television dot value, and we're going to set it to a new value, like 400, okay? So what this is going to do is when it gets to this line of code, it's going to go into here, cross out that value, set it equal to 400 now, okay? And since that's going to occur before this is actually going to evaluate to false, okay? And so this is not going to happen. Just to prove it, we can print the value here. Your TV is now worth television dot value. Okay. So if I go in and we redo this, your TV is now worth 400. Okay. And so because this was not more than 500, this did not run. So at any point, if I want to change any of the values of my object, I can. I don't know, maybe Sony, I'm trying to think of things that could change. A TV, probably not much is going to change other than the price, but like, I don't know, maybe it was color, is it a color TV? True. But I was dumb and I dropped it and now it's not color anymore. So I could say, okay, well, television dot color equals false if color or television dot color is equal to false, your TV is in black and white. Okay. All right. There's one more thing I really want to talk about. So, going back to my analogy here of like having a bunch of properties all related to one thing, I might have, we talked about building functions earlier, right? And if I was building a program about a car, there might be some functions about that car. So maybe I'm writing a function like function, car turn on, I don't know, where you you run this function and, it does something. The car has turned on. Or I'm going to write another function, car turn on radio. Radio is turned on. So because these are functions, how would we run them? Well, if I go inside here, I could, car turn on radio. We just did this, right? Oops, I can't save. But if I do this, it should run this function. Radio is turned on, right? Or I could run the other function by calling it just like we did earlier in today's module. We can do the same thing here. So it's like you might have an object, besides having properties that describe the object, you might want the object to be able to do things. Okay, so if it's a car, maybe you can turn the car on, maybe you can turn the car off, maybe you can recline the seats, maybe you can turn on the seat warmers or open the moonroof or whatever, whatever you want to do. Those would be functions. Okay. Now, the way we write functions in an object is a little different. It would look something like this, where we would name the function, then use colon and write function parentheses. Okay. And then you define what the function does. So here in exercise 15, I'm going to just list. So I have this car, and let's just list its manufacturer. So print car dot manufacturer. If I were to save and preview, let's go to console. All right, so what happened here is this said, go find the car object, go find this, get the value, and then substitute it into here. What if I do this? I'm going to say car dot turn on. Okay. So this is how we normally run a function. This means this function is actually within an object, in this case, the car object. So what this says is go find the car object, go find the turn on function. Now, when a function is inside of an object, we call it a method. Okay. And so, what this says is, okay, go find this object, run this function. What is this function going to do? Well, at the moment, all it's really going to do is just print something to the console, which says, car is turned on. There you go. Now, if I wanted to, right now this is just happening in setup. If I wanted to have a little more control over this, maybe I would put that inside of like a keyboard event or a mouse event. So what would happen, now is this function or this method would run, but only once someone presses a key on their keyboard. So if I go back, nothing happens, and then I hit a key on my keyboard, and then that happens. Okay. Sometimes you can have functions that take arguments. Okay. So we talked about how to write your own function and how to add a parameter. And we can actually do that here. So when I write a function, or I write a method, there is a built-in, or I can add in a parameter right here. So when someone calls the radio on method or function, it takes a music parameter, which means like this is meant to be like a string, which is like the name of the station. Okay. So what's going to happen is whatever is passed here, it's going to say radio is turned to, and then the type of music. Okay. So what does all this mean? Well, I'm going to go inside setup here, and I'm going to say car.radio, car.radio on, and I'll say, top 40s. Okay. So what's going to happen here is this finds this object. This runs the function in the object. This is passing the argument of top 40s, which is a string, to here. This gets substituted into there, and it should say radio is turned to top 40s. All right. Let's see if we're right. Save, refresh, boom. All right. Once again, we could, set this to, we could change this. So here's something we could do. I'm going to use an if statement, and I'm going to set it to, I'm going to make a little counter. Let count equal 0. And we're going to set this so that it runs this radio on when you click your mouse. So function mouse pressed car dot radio on. Okay, let's just make sure this works first. And I'm just still going to use top 40s. All right. And if I go back, so nothing's going to happen. Then I click my mouse and then it works, right? So what if we did this? How about every time I click my mouse, it's going to count how many times I've clicked. And then if that number of click gets to a certain number, it's going to change the radio station. Okay. So count equals count plus 1. If count is below 3, let's run the radio function and we'll use top 40s. If count is more than 3 and also less than count is less than 10, we are going to say classical. And then if count is more than 10, let's say radio on, hip hop or something. Okay. So, every time I click, it's going to add, it's going to use if statements to check something, evaluate it. So let's refresh. Oops. Radio. Oh, oops, sorry. Car.radio on. Because it's a function that's or a method within the car object. All right, let's try that again. Okay. Car.print. Car.print. One is it? 51. Oh, oops, car dot radio on. There we go. Okay, so I click, so 1, 2, 3, and then it should be, then it turns to classical, then it turns to hip hop. So you can see how you can kind of play around with this. We can, do things that change the argument that we pass it, and that gives us some interesting kind of ways here. Okay. All right. I wanted to show you guys that some of the there are objects. So in the way that there are built-in functions in P5, there are actually built-in objects too, that we can take advantage of. So one of those is the color object. Okay. And, what I've done here, just to kind of show you, is I've made a variable called my color, and then I actually set, this is an object, and I'm setting this value here. And then, so my color is going to be this object that holds this particular color value. And then I can actually get things from it, like how much red there is, how much green there is, things like that. So what I'm going to do, this is going to be, so if I were to, this is a particular shade of blue. If I come in here, this is how much red is in this color, which shouldn't be surprising. Set to 0. This would be how much, this is getting the, how much green is in this, which is currently 125. And this is going to convert this color from a color object into a string. That's what toString means. Okay, so this is now like text I could get. Now, how do how do I know these type of things? The answer really is you need a reference. And so the way we can do it, this was under color. If you, anything that has a P5 dot on it, where it says like, see how it says creates a P5 color. There's some other ones. There's a P5 geometry under model for 3D models. We're not going to talk about, there's a P5 for images, there's other, these are actual objects that we can take advantage of. So for instance, I'm going to go inside color and let's go find color. So when you do this, it's going to explain what the properties of this object are, and then what the built-in methods are. So see where it says parameters. So for instance, I could get how much gray is in the color, how much alpha is in the color. Um, you know, I could get the name of the color. Doesn't really give the methods though. Used to be better about that. So if I came back into here, I could say print my colored, what was that? Value. Let's try that. So this is going to go into this object that I built, this color, and then give me the value of it in terms of the name. Undefined. Maybe I didn't do that correct. Oh, whoops. It's value. Sorry, with a, it's not a fun. Oh, I thought it was. There's a value is not a function. Yeah, I guess it is a parameter. If I wanted to know how much gray was in it, color dot gray. Undefined. All right. Well, this did not work out quite as well as I wanted, but you would be able to be honest, you could find it better in the old ones. Where I'm going to go under color, P5 color. Yeah, see, these are the parameters. These are the functions that are built in. Two strings, set red, set green, set blue, set alpha. This would allow you to change a color or the value of it. So for instance, right now, let's say that this my color was set in the draw like that. I could do something that would actually change the value on the fly. So if I said something like function key pressed, I could say, okay, let's take the my color dot, what is it, get red? I guess it's set red. Set red. I'm going to take the red value, set red. Is it set red? Yeah. And I'm going to set it to, I don't know, 100. Okay. Let's go back and run this. So if I click a key, that's going to change the red amount in my color. And see how I made it lighter there? If I set this to a higher amount, I think 256 is the total. 255, it should be the total amount I could do. See how I did that on the fly by changing the red, using the red method that's within this object. So, this is just, you can take advantage of some of the objects here if you want to. For instance, color is a built-in object. You know, like I said, this older, I must admit the older one I thought explained it better. There's media, files, frame buffer. All these things are kind of built in that you can take advantage of. If you get more into P5, this might be helpful to you. Okay.